So what happens when a home doesn't close? I mean, it's sold, the deposit check's been submitted, there's a sold sign on the property, but the buyer decides they aren't going to close. I'm Aura Ross with the Mulholland Ross Group at realestatetoronto.com. And this question has come at us in the last few weeks more than we have seen in a very long time. So we thought we'd try to answer it a little here. Okay, so your home is sold. Sold signs on the lawn. Deposit check is now sitting with your listing agent's brokerage or your lawyer. And the buyer doesn't close. Now, look, for a number of years, this hasn't even been on anyone's mind. The market's been going up. Anyone who's bought a home is just so excited they did that by closing date because the home is actually worth more. Now, here we are in a new market where some areas and some home types are not in that situation. And in fact, if they sold their home a month ago, 2 months ago in February or March, even early April, even into May, they may be deciding or figuring out now that their home is actually not even worth what they offered a month ago. Sometimes it's bank appraisals showing up that are coming in a little lower. The bank is very aware that the market is getting a little tight, and so they are appraising a little lower, and suddenly the buyer doesn't have all the funds available to close. So that's one issue. The buyer doesn't have the funds. So what actually happens? So most people think that, well, if the buyer doesn't close, the deposit that's sitting with the brokerage automatically goes to the sellers. But that actually doesn't happen. The deposit is sitting in a trust account that the brokerage can't touch until either the contract has been satisfied, meaning it's closed, and therefore the deposit is being released, or the buyer and seller's lawyer both agree that this deposit can be released. And so that becomes a whole conversation. How is the deposit being released? Is the buyer going to say, fine, take the deposit, and I just don't want to close and don't sue me? These are all things that happen. So essentially what really happens is the seller goes back to market. They go back to market and try to get the home sold for the same amount or more than that they had already had it sold for. If that happens and the seller actually gets the same or more, chances are the deposit, that first deposit, is going to get released back to the first buyer. Maybe you can claim some expenses against it, but essentially you're going to give that money back so that you can free up everything to sell your home to the new buyer. If your home sells for less, then that becomes the question, can you go back to the buyer and negotiate now that difference based on you're sitting with a good deposit? Now, look, it's not for the faint of heart. Some buyers just dig in their heels and say, forget it. We're not closing. We don't care. Sue us, tie up our money for 5 years. Now, that's the story if the buyer chooses not to close at all. We are hearing other stories where the buyers are showing up prepared to close, but not at the price they had originally negotiated with the seller. Now, this puts a homeowner in a really horrible position, especially if you've already bought a home and you don't have the means, the funds, quite frankly, the energy to sue and not close and tie everything up and spend the next few years in that mode. So sadly, those homeowners sometimes are having to close at different prices. Look, this is a difficult market to buy and sell in. It can be extremely lucrative working in full integrity without breaking, contracts with people. It can be extremely lucrative opportunity to move up or down in this market. However, you have to go in eyes wide open. And so if you are thinking about buying or selling or investing in real estate, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here, been licensed since 1988. I've seen a few ups and downs. So if you have questions about any of this, please reach out, 416-230-8500. We're the Mulholland Ross Group at realestatetoronto.com. It's your home. It's important, and we care.